Mayor McLean, how are you?
I'm good. Good morning.
Good morning. I am really happy to have you in here because I had Representative Robbie in a week or two ago. She
Yeah.
was talking about affordable housing in Idaho and the community. And you and I got connected because Boise is, obviously it's the capital city of Idaho, and it is experiencing massive growth, housing crunches. Obviously, we have a phenomenal university here. We have graduate colleges here, and law schools and things of that nature. We're also experiencing an enormous amount of growth in workforce, right? And so,
Yeah.
for instance, I have a friend who moved from Chicago to manage a construction project of an apartment complex,
Yep.
and he and his workers had to come here to build more housing. And in doing so, they exacerbated the housing problem in, and I was like, this is kind of counterintuitive, don't you think? He's like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just here to work. I'm like, awesome, man. No problem. But this is the level of difficulty, which is even solving the problem creates new problems. So what is going on with housing in Boise and what is being done to address it?
Sure. First, I want to say I listened to that podcast that you had with Allie, and she did such a great job. She's
great.
an amazing partner to the city in addressing a lot of these housing issues, but I thought she did such a good job of outlining all the different parts and pieces of the challenges we have. And in Boise, I've said from day one that our goal is to be a safe and welcoming city for everyone. And a big part of that is to ensure that we have homes at Boise budgets, a home for everyone, because if you work here, you should be able to live here. And so we set about kind of like not leaving any stone unturned, looking at an all of the above strategy, if you will, on housing, where we can incentivize more homes, where we can take a market-based approach like our zoning code to kind of lay the map for where you have more homes, how we build public-private partnerships to address affordability, and kind of have put all these different pieces together with the community to meet some goals we set, because we thought if we don't measure it, we're not going to be able to manage it. So we set a goal of 2,500 homes, affordable homes for folks like working people like Allie talked about, firefighters, teachers, et cetera, in our community, planned by 2026. And we set out to save existing affordable housing, 2,500 homes by 2026 as well.
Okay. You said like the dirty word, which is like affordable housing, but that like this means different things because
like my daughter needs housing that's
No,
affordable
I
to her
know.
budget. I know.
I know.
I need to find a house that's affordable to my budget, right? Like
I agree
we
completely.
fundamentally need homes that are affordable for every person that has a job at different wages.
Right. And that phrase, affordable housing, has taken on nationally like a life of its own. It's like, okay, guys, is anybody against having houses in like the average person's price range? It's like, no. It's like, okay, should we make them affordable? They're like, oh, no. Like, we're not about. So like when you say public partnerships, when you talk about affordable housing, like 2,500 units of affordable housing, what does that mean? Because there are other places in the country that address this by being like, okay, you're building an apartment complex or you're building a condominium complex. And by the way, 50% of those have to be for people making underneath like 25% of the median income. And then what you have is, say you have I'm just going to use really round numbers. Okay. Say you have an apartment complex or a condominium complex. It's like 100 units and each unit averages $1 million. Okay. Again, round numbers. And the city comes along and says, okay, that's fine. But like 30% of these have to be $500,000. And then the developer says, that's fine, but we're going to have to make the other ones like 1.3 million. They're like, I don't care. We're the city. Just make affordable housing. So the people paying market for these condominiums end up subsidizing the lower housing, which is why, again, affordable housing from some areas, people are like, oh, I really dislike this because I don't qualify for affordable housing. I make just enough that I don't hit that mark. And then all of a sudden I have to like spend all of this money on housing and it exacerbates the problem. But I don't think that's what's going on in Boise.
No, that's not what's going on in Boise. I'll speak to the public-private partnerships first, but I really want to tell the story of all the different pieces we're doing, because as a community, we have a history. Like if you look all the way back from when settlers came, of coming together, facing big challenges, and saying, we're going to figure this out because we're going to take care of each other. And then we get, throughout the course of Boise's history, we have these moments of growth and everybody's so worried about what's going to change because we're growing so much. And then we get through that hump. We've faced those challenges, turned them into opportunities. Everybody settles again. Then we have another period of rapid growth, and we're kind of going through the same things. In fact, just last night, we honored a council member, the first Black council member in Boise. He was appointed to council in the late 90s. And the issues he led on and the issues that council 26, 27, 30 years ago was facing are so many of those ones that we're facing today. And housing didn't factor into it as much as transportation and other issues of growth did. But today what we're seeing is that folks need homes that they can pay for with the wages that they're making. And I hear from CEOs that, their executives can't find homes that are in the budget they want. I hear from mid-level managers that they can't find homes that they can afford. I hear from, restaurant owners and restaurant workers that they just like to live in Boise, but they just can't find a place. So there's such a large spectrum of housing that we have to address. And in the space of public-private partnerships, we've said, look, as you talked about this last week, the cost of housing is influenced by land, by labor, by lumber, by laws. There are a couple things that the city actually can participate in, and that is land and laws. And so we said, okay, we've got land out there that is historically held, like our maintenance shop, or our tool sheds for the parks. And when we know that we need more housing, we believe that there's a way to actually put that land to better use and figure out where we can, have the maintenance shops and other things where you're not going to have homes. So we set out to create a city land bank, if you will, and said, okay, we've got this land. We're going to seek other opportunities where we can have land, and we're going to put that land out for the best proposal possible from developers. That's the public-private partnership. We're going to hold on to the land, so we're saving them one of the L's, the cost of land, and long-term the property taxes because it's city land, and they can lease that land, but they only get the right to do that if they put together the best package for the residents of Boise. So what we're seeing is that developers have been responding to that, and they figure out their capital stack. They hear from us that we need deeply affordable homes that the market just won't make on its own. We need homes for working people at affordable rates. And then, of course, we need other housing. And we want to see homes proposed that mix all sorts of levels of pricing, but that have an average area median income that'll target like the folks that need homes the most. And so there's a couple examples right now. And it's not just about homes. It's about what else can you do to create community in these places. So up at Franklin and Orchard, we just opened. It was so wonderful after seeing this project all the way through to celebrate the opening of these apartments. Mixed income apartments. So meaning you're not just concentrating folks of one background in a space.
Sure.
And it's right up against a city park. It has built into it a daycare for 89 kiddos. There's spaces for coffee shops on the bottom. It's right along a bus line, and it's across the street from a grocery store. So the way that it's built, there's public art. The community outside of the apartment complex, the Franklin, can enjoy it. Folks using the park can enjoy the art and the sitting spaces. But there's a way to just interact for all these folks. And so when people moved in, they had an opportunity to have a home that they could afford in a way that gets them close to the resources they need to get to work or take care of their family. We've done that on State Street. It's under construction right now at State and Arthur. Back in the day, there was this place called Smokey Davis, and it was a place where you go get smoked meats and things to smoke meat. And we had this little triangle piece of property. And that is becoming, I think it's 176 homes. An average income there will be about 80% average median income on the property, if I recall correctly. 10% of those homes are going to be dedicated to families exiting homelessness. But again, we took city land and said, we'll work with the person that gives the best proposal. Now there'll be homes at all different income levels. Families exiting homelessness can live there. It's next to a school, so the kids can walk safely. It's on a bus line, so parents can get to work. That is the type of public-private partnership that we're looking at, creating intentional community that's integrated with the neighborhoods to give everybody a leg up in that home they need.
Who built the one on Franklin?
Franklin was the J. Fisher Company.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'd love to chat with them to
Oh, I'm sure
understand
that they'd love it.
how
Yeah.
they penciled this out. And if I may, that what you're talking about is I was never homeless. Okay. And when I made it out of college, I started a business right away, and like the week I graduated, and that worked for me. And my wife and I worked really, really, really hard. I was very worried as a younger adult about not being financially stable. So
Yeah.
we worked 7 days a week for like ever. And I actually remember a conversation we had. I think we just got married. So I was like 26, 27, and we were both working 7 days a week, really hard. Like we'd work 30-hour weekends and then like burn into the week, just hammering it hard. I remember having this conversation with my wife, then wife. She was like, look, I can't, like, I know you're going to keep working 7 days a week no matter what, but like, I can't, I need a day off just for, just cause. And I understood him. Like, yeah, that's fine. Like but it was a real serious conversation about, look, what is going to be the balance of effort here if one person's working 7 days a week and one person's working 6? Can we collectively understand each other? And like, she was worried that I would be upset. I'm like, of course, look, I understand. Like, this is not fun. We're working a lot. Anyway, and that was us. But I have family members that are not thriving in that same way. They're either not capable of doing that. And I understand that because it's hard. And my wife and I think, at least looking back on us in our 20s, it's like, wow, we were like hammering on a different frequency. Like, I don't see a lot of 20-year-olds being willing to do that, or, 25-year-olds. I'm not saying I'm special. I'm just saying we had a certain propensity and capacity for labor and work and effort. And not everybody has that. Like, that's just the way this goes. And I have family members that are really struggling as established adults to find a place in a community. One happens to be a school teacher, and she is a totally fine person, but her housing, even well into her 30s, has been one that has to, tolerate having roommates. And,
Yeah.
Being a 35-year-old and having roommates and not having your own space is a very difficult thing. And then moving out of that to like this basement 400 square foot studio that's like off on the side of there's no community integration, there's no transportation. And that's really rough, because whatever life experience she's having is not best suited by being like segregated away from society in this like little hovel. I see that. And whereas I could say like, well, look, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. That's fine. That's not for everyone. And that's not everybody's capacity. And that doesn't mean that those people should be effectively punished through city design or civic design to be like on the outskirts of town, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just not the way it goes. The other point that you're bringing up, families coming out of poverty, and speaking with Representative Robbie, who again was fantastic. It was like our time got crunched. I got to have her back because she brought up a ton of things. And she said, look, the majority of families coming into and out of poverty are single moms. Now, that doesn't mean the majority of people in poverty or homelessness are single moms, but the family units overwhelmingly are in fact single moms, and that's crazy. Like, because for a number of reasons, especially considering like, how are you going to manage a job or get a job? I mean, how are you going to manage maintaining a vehicle, things of this nature? So it's like, look, there needs to be successful integration and a place to make sure homelessness is not a net, but a trampoline, and people like spring out of it. It's like, yeah, you hit a hard time. This is not going well. Like, I get it, but like, we're going to do what we can collectively as a municipality to make sure that you have a place to be integrated back into society and get back on your feet. I think that's great. Like, and it's a difficult pill for some people to swallow, that it's like, hey, I did it by myself. Like, why can't these people do it by themselves? That's a wrong take. That's the wrong take. It's like, look, this is going to happen to some portion of Idahoans.
And it's happening across the state. It's
Right.
not just the Boise region,
Right.
the Treasure Valley that's grappling with the rising cost of housing and the lack of affordable options. I mean, when I've talked to the governor and others, they're saying that in every community, this is what they're hearing, that this is not just a regional problem. And I think that's important to recognize too, because we need more than local solutions. We need the county, the state, frankly, the federal government to recognize that there are steps that we can take to improve access and affordability of housing. And so, I talked about that public-private partnership. I also want to talk about the market-based approach that we took, which is our modern zoning code. Our zoning code and the zoning codes of most places are so outdated. They're, they were written well before you and I were born. Maybe my parents were in college. Nope, they were probably in high school when these zoning codes were written. So it's not reflective of the needs of today or the communities that people expect today.
Right.
So we rewrote our zoning code. We call it the modern zoning code, and said, look, as communities change and grow, expectations change. People want homes that they can afford to live in, but not just a home, as you said about your sister, an ability to connect to other people, to find access to those third places like coffee shops. Like everybody should be able to have that. And so our zoning code lays the groundwork and creates a map for where we will allow more dense people-scaled housing along transit corridors, but also allows us as a city to think about how we plan for in the long term public safety, the number of cops that we'll need, where we need to have fire stations if we're sprawling, but importantly, if we're growing together so that we're living amongst each other and creating connections and strengthening that vibrant community that Boise has. We'll know where we need to have safe walks to meet our 10-minute walk to a park goal. We'll be able to incentivize folks living on transit corridors. So in the long run, transit becomes a more sustainable option. And when we passed this, it was so interesting because we had over 100 people show up to share their thoughts on the modern zoning code. And then overwhelmingly, people supported it. But the people that showed up to support it were young professionals, folks that had grown up in Boise and in Idaho had left and come back, kind of like Allie did, and others that said, look, we really want to live where we grew up, and we need a home, and there aren't enough. And that's the key piece, is there are not enough across this country, including in this region. I think about it, our family, Scott and I met in high school. We got married right out of college. We moved here when we were 23, had nobody. Were able to, while we were paying our school loans, which I paid, my last payment school loan was the day I was elected mayor. So
Congratulations.
I paid school loans for a long time. In fact, we were saving money for college for our kids at the same time because we had kids when we were 24. We were like, we started everything early. We could find an apartment and save enough money with that rent in the apartment, because they were available and there were enough then, to be able to buy a home a couple years later. When I think about what my kids can do, and I hear this from Boiseans in every neighborhood of the city, it's a really different place now. One, there's not enough. So the McLeans of Boise, there's 4 of us. We need 1 home right now. At some point, I hope my kids will come back as adults. Then we're going to need 3 homes for the McLeans of Boise, as opposed to just that 1. So even the people that have been here for a long time need more homes than we have access to. And that has a big impact on the market and affordability. So we looked at how can we create more space for more homes, to create, as I said, a sense of like, rather than driving through us, people are living amongst us, and creating that connection and maintaining that kind of legacy of Boise, which is deeply connected neighborhoods that make up a city.
One other aspect that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, I've talked to a bunch of people from the American Land Trust, as well as ICOL, the Idaho Coalition of Land Trust. And one aspect that they keep bringing up is like, listen, where you have density, you need to keep essentially integrating more you need open spaces, yes, but the problem with ever pushing urban sprawl is multi. In fact, I spoke with Chief Niemeyer from the Boise Fire Department yesterday, talking about the urban wildlands interface and how people are pushing farther and farther out. And this has a couple effects. One, it puts more people at risk for that wildlands fire that sparks up far more frequently. Like, you're not going to have a grass fire in the middle of Boise. It's going to start somewhere else, and then it's going to come in. The other problem is that as we push out with urban sprawl, we also reduce our farmland, right? And our functional agricultural land. And people might say like, okay, I like seeing cows. Yeah, that's an aesthetic thing, but it's also a functional tax thing, because the farmlands have a functional tax net benefit to the counties that they're within, the agricultural areas. And if we continue with like low density housing just pushing out, instead of addressing a more urbanized center that have a lot of amenities close by, if we keep pushing out, one, you're going to have people that you won't fix the housing affordability problem if everybody wants like a half acre and whatnot. You'll also increase the tax burden on people, because we'll have less functional tax benefit coming from our agricultural areas. So from a fiscal standpoint, it makes sense to address a more centralized, well-connected, higher density housing solution for this area, because we'll be able to preserve our surrounding ag lands. We'll have a lower wildlands urban fire interface, and we'll have people that are more connected and don't need necessarily to have as many cars or whatnot if they're on functional bus lines that meet their needs or things of that nature.
And I'd say even beyond Boise, even if folks want to have a car, it's more affordable for cities to service their neighborhoods and communities if folks are living a little bit more close together. From fire costs, from police costs.
Sure.
So we look at all of that all the time in terms of how we can best continue to provide the level of service to our residents that we have. As we grow, the most efficient from a tax perspective way to do that is to grow together rather than apart.
Right. My wife and I lived in a place in Oakland when we were pretty young. We were first married, and man, we could walk to coffee every single morning. We got to do something to get Pete's Coffee here, by the way. I'm a huge,
Nope.
Listen to me.
We do not need.
Okay, fine. Tell me where the coffee is.
So
Don't say Dawson's.
The special thing about Boise is that there are so many local coffee shops.
Name one.
Flying M.
Name one that's walking distance from this studio.
Oh, from this studio, you've got like 12.
Okay, well, I just need one. I go to Dawson's. That's
pour.
good.
Flying M.
Push and pour. Is that like a French press place?
Nope.
Okay. Well, why are they pushing? There's no push.
Flying M.
Okay. I'm going to get this list from you.
The what?
Jitters by Jane.
Jitters by Jane, right
Jitters by
upstairs.
Jane.
Yeah, there's so many.
We are in the basement, aren't we?
And,
Okay, listen, I'm getting the list.
The amazing thing about Boise, I just love it, is that once upon a time, there was a Starbucks downtown. It didn't do so well.
That's because Starbucks is terrible.
Starbucks
is trash.
It's because people love our local coffee shops.
That
and our
may
local
be
restaurants and our local burger shops, like whether it be West End.
I'm going to start Peter's Coffee.
Nope. Like,
listen, I'm all for trying coffee. My point is that we would walk to Pete's Coffee from our house. It was 3 blocks away.
Sure, yeah.
We would walk every single morning. And then we'd go across the street to the Posh Bagel, and there was this like really goofy guy that worked there, but they had really good like garlic, whatever, smear stuff. Anyway, and there was the Fenton's like 2 blocks down from there that we would like go at 10 o'clock when we got off work and like just crush ice cream sundaes at 11 o'clock at night. That was great. And we had all of that stuff. So like, and we so fondly look back upon that time for like, sure, when are we going to live somewhere we can walk to get coffee? Because that's our thing. We're both SAT tutors, so we had to work at night when kids got out of school. So we'd start at like 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the evening, but we would always hang out and just do breakfast and like coffee every single day together. That was like our jam. So, when you talk about being able to service people closer together, man, I really appreciate that. Like, it's something that I maybe one day will get back to being able to do, like walk to get coffee. Because where I am now, it's like we'd have to walk 10 miles to get a cup of coffee. So I'm at home, like pouring my dumb pour over. Anyway, so I appreciate like that. That's a really cool thing. Chief Niemeyer was also talking about things that people can do to improve their insurance carrying capacity of their house, right? Like obviously clearing out gutters, removing shrubs and things of that nature. And there is a big push for existing homeowners that they can essentially retrofit or fix things within their house that either make them more energy efficient, that make them better for fire insurance, because everybody's worried about getting canceled because of insurance. I talked to Dean Cameron last week from the Department of Insurance, and this is a real problem. Like the state of Idaho is trying to do things to entice insurance carriers to remain and keep servicing Idaho, right, even in the midst of these like apocalyptic fires. So what are the things around Boise that are similar to that existing homeowners can take advantage of? Sure.
And I have a feeling that Chief Niemeyer talked about it. We call it the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface.
There you go.
We've got different neighborhood programs for especially those neighborhood, normally organized by neighborhood associations. They reach out to the fire department. There are programs that they can then have an assessment of their neighborhood to see what needs to be done to create kind of that fire break and protection around neighborhoods. And then I think part of it too is a house by house assessment if the neighborhood association decides to do it that way. Gotcha. And over the years, I'm thinking like Barber Valley, the length of the Boise front, over the years, quite a few of the neighborhoods up against the foothills have done that. But you brought up the land trust, and I didn't expect to talk about this, but I would like to, if okay.
Please, I got nowhere else to be.
We have in Boise, when you look up at those foothills from down here, they're open. And it's really different than a lot of cities that you see, whether it be Reno or LA, where people have just grown up into their hills. And that was intentional. in the late 90s, a group of people came together and said, look, we want to figure out how to manage the lands in the foothills. There's federal land, there's private land, a lot of it's grazing land. And they worked with developers and came up with a plan for, one, the rules about building in foothills, and then two, the areas of the foothills that should be protected and why. And in 2001, the city passed its first foothills levy. They gave it $10 million to set aside land in the foothills for perpetuity. And so I say this because we are both looking at how you develop in a responsible way that's affordable for the cities to service it and residents to live. But then also we continue to grow on that legacy of protecting open spaces around us. So after that first campaign, which I actually ran in my 20s, and it was 500.
You ran the campaign to get to 10 million?
Uh-huh.
Wait, what were you doing in your 20s? I was like a monkey in my 20s. What were you doing?
I don't know. It sounds like you were going to bagel shops and coffee shops.
Yeah, that was so good. So good. I'd do it again. That's the only part of my youth that I'd like to relive, like bagels and coffee. I'm gluten-free now. I can't even get a dumb bagel.
Because you ate too many bagels.
Oh my God, it could be. Keep going.
So there were we had five.
How lame. I can't believe I admitted that. Gluten-free. Like, I'm not even a man. It's like, you can't even have are you scared of a little bagel? It's like a little bit actually. A little GI upset. Anyway,
you get special one.
TMI. Here we go.
But there
Back
were
to you.
500 volunteers that, worked their butts off talking to Boiseans on their front porches about the values of open space. And it passed. And the city set about working with landowners and others to purchase easements, to purchase whole pieces of property outright. We did some land trades with the federal government to get lands lower for the city, and then we traded some stuff up higher. We've been very intentional about how we do that to create the trail system that we have, and also just to protect some of those lands for habitat like elk, or even the view sheds that we have at the city of Boise. And then in 2015, we did it again, and this time 76% or 74% of Boiseans said yes. We're going to do another $10 million levy, and this time it's going to be for foothills, other open space, and clean water works restoration along the river. And so we've continued to find ways. We've used those funds for a linear park along a canal in West Boise. We've used it to do kind of river cleanup and habitat restoration work. We've set aside more lands in the foothills through easements, and we've built trails, and continuing to look for partnerships to do more. And as we grow, I believe it becomes even more important. We're thinking about, okay, what more needs to be done in the foothills? What can we do in neighborhoods to develop our pathways plan? We approved a plan that lines out 112 miles of pathways through the city that we'd like to develop, similar to the greenbelt that we have. Now we want to connect the farmland to the foothills through a pathways network. We know that there are other goal of making sure that every kid can walk to a park safely within 10 minutes. Means that we need to purchase some land in different parts of the city where we're growing. And so looking again and into the future at how we continue to build on this legacy of, supporting each other, taking care of each other, and being intentional about how we create community, the legacy of public-private partnerships that solve the biggest challenges that we have in the city, and then that overarching legacy of protecting the place that makes Boise so special, that her people rely on and care so much about.
Love that. I spoke with Tim Martin, Idaho Trails Association, one of the I believe he's a board member, about the Ridge to River projects and really integrating this flow through environment where it's like you can go all the way from down here, splashing in the water, all the way up to like these hiking trails on the ridge, and really utilizing that and saving that. I do agree with you. Like, I came up in areas that had foothills that were well overpopulated, and it creates all kinds of urban
with fire
problems.
now.
I was going to say the
so.
Oakland fires were these like cataclysmic event that just burned through all the eucalyptus and whatnot that was now in the Berkeley and Oakland foothills. That was an invasive species. It used to all be redwood. But the point is, like, it's a really gnarly thing. And you look up, you do not see like beautiful foothills, right? Like from my house, I have, I live in a little neighborhood that has foothills on either side of it. And from my house, the second story, I look out in the winter and I see elk. We have like binoculars, and people don't believe it. Like, we take pictures of them. Like, is that really? It's like, yeah, you just see these elk walking along the top of the ridge because that's their winter rangeland. And, we obviously have wildland corridors and whatnot for them to be able to continue migrating and whatnot. But having that, it's so different. You're like, gosh, where we were living right before, I moved here in my former lifetime, there was this beautiful 300-acre rangeland that was owned by the McGee family. And it was right next to our neighborhood school. So when my kids were in like kindergarten and first grade, we'd walk them to school. We were able to walk them right there. And there would be these cows right on the fence line. They're like, great. Yeah, it was fantastic. And they ended up selling that, as was their right. And the city I was living in did not do anything to integrate with them and like work with them on specific things. And all of it started getting developed. And again, there was this like beautiful pocket of these rolling hills where you had active ranchers working. And then it just got popped off. And you see that in a lot of urbanized areas like that. Like that's just one of the big differences.
And Boise's been intentional doing everything we can in our section. So Eagle's different, right? Like we're doing stuff above Boise. But now our goal, in addition to the pathways and the parks, is to be able to go from the mouth of the Barber Valley through all of the open space reserves pretty much to Highway 55, but earlier because Boise ends before that. But like a Boise front trail, like looking at how we piece together either trail easements or parcels of land that the city's been able to acquire to make that possible in the long run.
That would be wild. I actually don't live in Eagle. I live in unincorporated county. So if we were able to connect a trail system from here to that area, that would be bonkers. Like I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. First off, thank you for that. Thank you for running the campaign and explaining that, because I didn't know that Boise was, here you have this urban center that's intentionally preserving recreational areas in the hills. I didn't know about the ridge to the river.
Intentionally, very intentional about it. Yeah.
Somebody had mentioned to me the Inflation Reduction Act as far as something that homeowners can take advantage of in Idaho. Could you explain this to me?
Sure. And we'll have to look to the state because they at some point will make available all the rebates that residents can access. I'll talk about it from the city's perspective. We have the opportunity whenever we put solar panels on top of our fire station, like the fire station on the way out to your house on State Street is going to have solar panels on top of it, to get direct pay cash back, because rather than a tax credit, we'd get cash back for a certain percentage of the cost of that project. Homeowners can take advantage of similar things where there will be rebates and cash back tax credits for energy efficiency projects, for retrofits on your home, for a whole bunch of different things that residents can do to save money in the long run when it comes to power costs, are some of those things that the IRA did.
Can I give you a housing hack? It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Installing solar panels. And I know people, you like say solar panels in this area, for some reason, people get like they get glitchy. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about solar. It just looks like an iPad. I don't understand. Not that the iPad's attractive, but the point is, if you install solar panels, you get, I believe it's a 30% tax rebate right now. Okay. But what people don't understand is you can also work in the cost of any structure that needs to be modified or erected to install those solar panels, and you get 30% of that cost back too. So if you have an aging roof or a roof you'd like to replace for whatever reason, you can actually work that into the cost of, you can work it into the cost of your solar installation, and you will get 30% back on your roof. So if your roof costs $30,000, you'll get, like $9,000 back in a tax credit off of your roof, which could actually pay for the panels that you're installing, depending on how many you install. But
that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's a housing hack that it's like, okay, that's a great idea. And you get, theoretically,
we have to replace our roof, but it's coming soon, I'm sure.
I know.
House is 25 years old.
I know. The roof is the one big ticket where you're like, oh, it keeps coming. Like it's never going to stop. And it's like foundation's there forever as long as it's a good one. Electrical, like don't burn the place down. Windows, like you can kind of squeak through. But the roof, there's no faking a roof. Yeah. And like at some point you got to tear the whole thing off. Like, especially coming from older. I have a newer house now, so I don't care. I'm happier with it. So the bottom line is there are a lot of these, like windows are always a big retrofit thing that you can get tax credit
and then
assistance
there were other programs through the IRA that the city took care of. We spent the last 5 years, and we'll keep doing it, like running around lobbying for funds to come to Boise, because every dollar that we can get in here is a dollar we can save in another way for our residents. And through the IRA, we got a $3.5 million grant. The future's a little uncertain. I'm not going to lie there. To be able to install EV charging throughout the city and public places. So that as people, if they, have that consumer choice and choose to move in the electrical car route, there's actually places where they can go at libraries or fire stations or parking spots where they could plug in. So we won a grant in the first round of grants that would allow us to install 100 of the kind of regular chargers, those ones that kind of take a long time. And then I think 4 to 6 of the superchargers, and then also develop apprenticeship programs with electricians to support workforce development in the electrical space. It's all in the grant.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, we were pretty psyched to have been able to build the partnerships, put it together, and then win it in the first round of funding.
When you talk about installing electrical chargers, and again, I bring with me a lot of baggage. I'm not a perfect person. I'm sorry. But initially it's like, oh, solar chargers, because again, in my former state, there are so many conflicting messages that get sent to individuals in different places, which is like, oh, you need to stop using so much electricity. And by the way, use more electricity with your car. But Idaho is working incredibly hard to address its energy needs. I mean, I was speaking with Lieutenant Governor Betke last week, as well as Rich Stover from the Department of Energy and Mineral Resources about the Speed Council, that they're trying to streamline energy projects throughout the state of Idaho that will benefit Idahoans. This is not like a federal program coming in, pumping electricity to a different state. It's like, no.
It's our power.
We need power. We need power.
Yeah.
And we need power. We need a glut of power. We need more power now than we've ever had needed. And we're going to need double that in as much time.
I mean, ultimately, I think we have a great partnership with Idaho Power. They have a relatively clean power mix, but they have goals to be 100% clean. And they're
big into hydro, obviously.
Hydro, solar, wind. They've got a little natural gas, which they'll continue to use as a bridge, but they've decommissioned the coal that they bought. They are a great partner, and I've said to them, look, you guys have a goal. I think it's by 2040 or 2045. City government has a goal by 2035, so we're going to help you meet your goal as one of your larger customers. And we've worked with them to figure that out. In fact, together with Meta and Micron, we developed the first power purchasing agreement that the state has had, where Idaho Power is constructing a solar panel farm, so new power.
And you're their dedicated client.
We are the clients, so that we can actually take advantage of the clean electricity, which is why we want to electrify our fleet and our buildings, because we know that it's clean electricity. And it's a hedge, if you will, in the long run against rising energy prices. So it saves people money in the long run. And so now our airport and our water renewal system off State Street on Lander Street are powered by 100% clean electricity because of that partnership with Idaho Power. So we're constantly looking for more partnerships like that to help us meet the goals that we have that'll keep our residents healthy, make sure that in the long run we're a resilient city, and that there's opportunities and cost savings both today and into the future.
Man, what a win for both.
It's really cool.
You're like, hey, Idaho Power, if you put up this solar farm, we'll buy your electricity.
It was a little bit more than that, but roll up our sleeves, hard work.
Well, you make it look easy. Anyway.
But really appreciate their partnership and meeting our goals that their shareholders have as well.
Mayor, listen, I know it's a working day. I really appreciate you coming in. I'd love to keep this conversation going. There's so many cool things about Boise that I'm learning, and especially being downtown now. I'm walking around. Apparently, I need a list of coffee shops.
I'll get you a list of coffee shops in neighborhoods. I think you should move around and do some of these things in other neighborhoods too.
And do what? Things.
Let's just walk around with these little mics and do a little tour.
Man on the street interview. You want to do man on the street interviews with me?
I don't know.
Come on.
That would actually be pretty
Listen
fun.
to me. I'm not good. I'll do it if you do it. We'll work it out. Thank you for coming in. Please come back. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thanks so much, Matt.